Kia ora, ngā mai ki te whare. Welcome to The House, ko Louis Collins aho. With most of last week occupied by getting to the budget finish line, this week Parliament was back into the usual swing of things, making laws. This week, though, had the added layer of urgency. Urgency is a tool that the government can use to progress bills through the House more quickly by enabling longer days of debating with no stand-down period between each of a bill's stages of consideration. You'll notice that the schedule for select committees was pretty bare this week. That's because when urgency is accorded, the House takes precedence. Here's Leader of the House, Chris Bishop, on Tuesday.
Mr Speaker, the House is going into urgency, or proposing to go into urgency this week for several bills. The Adoption Amendment Bill must be passed through all stages to prevent adoptions from proceeding where the safety of children could be at risk and to ensure no new applications are lodged between the bill's introduction and royal assent. There are three bills going to Select Committee, Mr Speaker: the Defence Workforce Bill, Auckland Transport Governance Bill, Retail Payment Systems. The Government's desire is to get those bills to a committee for further consideration as soon as possible. We're also passing through all stages the Family Boost Amendment Bill, Income Tax Family Boost. It's a short bill, as been flagged by the Government previously, to put more money in the pockets of new families. Takes effect on the 1st of October, so it does need to be passed by that point. The Customs, Levies and Other Matters Amendment Bill, Mr Speaker, has to be passed by the end of September to allow the Customs Service to make necessary adjustments before the changes come into force, and the Emissions Trading Scheme Forestry Conversion Amendment Bill needs to be passed as soon as practicable to allow government departments to set up the systems needed for the new regime. So urgency, I think, is more than justified on these occasions.
The first bill put under urgency was the Adoption Amendment Bill. This bill wasn't originally on the House's agenda this week. While the government gave the opposition some notice, they had little time to properly review or prepare for it, receiving a copy of the bill on Tuesday morning. The law change itself is intended as a temporary fix, a response to what the government says are currently unsafe adoption settings. Here's Minister in Charge Nicole McKee speaking during the bill's first reading.
Mr Speaker, we are progressing this bill under urgency because we cannot, in good conscience, stand by while children are at risk. We do need to act now. I acknowledge that this change won't be easy news for some families and that they will be disappointed. But keeping children safe is our top priority. It is not acceptable that our adoption laws have been used in ways that harm children adopted from overseas. We must close this legislative enabler.
Because protecting young people from exploitation is hardly a contentious issue, all parties supported the bill's intent.
This is an important bill, and I'll say straight away that at this stage we are supporting it.
We do support this bill.
I also stand on behalf of Te Pāti Māori to make a short call in support of the aim of this bill.
But even when a bill has unanimous support, opposition MPs still have a duty to interrogate its drafting and efficacy. Perhaps nowhere is this more the case than during the Committee of the Whole House stage, where the bill is picked apart section by section and MPs can quiz the Minister in detail.
Members, the House is in committee on the Adoption Amendment Bill. We come first to Part 1, the debate on clauses 3 to 14, amendments to the Adoption Act 1955 and Schedule 1.
Given the short notice, opposition MPs likely had to skim read the bill and respond to what was in front of them. Committee stages often feature a familiar cast, Parliament's former jurists and practitioners of detail, people like Labour's Duncan Webb.
So in terms of the recognition of overseas I'm just a little confused. Does it mean that we do or don't recognise adoptions where all of the parties at the time of the adoption were resident overseas? Now, it may be just me. I mean, I'm sure I could work through it eventually, but I haven't had that opportunity, right?
And the Greens' Lawrence Yunnan.
Second question is around the idea of habitually resident. So where the adopted child was habitually residing overseas. Now, it's a very specific distinction because what we are looking at is residing based as opposed to nationality based.
The absence of political point scoring made for a palpably more collegial affair than MPs would perhaps be used to at the committee stage, less of a cross-examination and more of a legislative focus group.
Duncan Webb also asked about the new definitions, and it is confusing. It is confusing. I've spent a little bit of time myself trying to get it into my head about how this will operate. But effectively, the suspension is going to apply to New Zealand citizens living and habitually resident overseas. Now, there's a thing here about the wording. I originally had wanted to use those that were ordinarily resident, but actually got told I can't use that word, or I shouldn't use that word, because habitually resident works better, and there is a definition for that in other legislation. So we have used habitually resident.
And in the game of politics, where questions are so often loaded and answers are so often avoided, it may well have been refreshing to have a relatively productive and cordial committee stage.
I really appreciate the Minister for her engagement throughout the committee stage in clarifying all of the questions we had posed to the Minister during the first and second reading.
After that bill was complete, the government moved on to 4 first readings. The
Defence Workforce Amendment Bill
picked up from where it had left off the week prior. It relates to the striking of defence for civilians, particularly the process of allowing armed forces personnel to step into those civilian roles while industrial action happens. You may recall that in November last year, Defence Minister Judith Collins made a ministerial statement informing the House of her granting authority to armed forces personnel to fill in for civilian Defence Force staff who were taking industrial action at the time. Under the current legislative settings, the Minister of Defence has to seek a resolution from Parliament to ensure armed forces personnel could fill in for a period longer than 14 days, meaning Parliament had to be sitting for those powers to be extended. The new bill would make changes which enable these powers over more than 14 days without the government having to step in. That bill is now with the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee, who will soon be taking submissions from the public. Next up was the
Local Government Auckland Council Transport Governance Amendment Bill,
which creates an Auckland Transport Committee which will have equal representation of councillors and ministerial appointees. All parties were broadly supportive of it, and the bill will also soon be open for public submissions. The third new bill up for this week was the
Retail Payment System Ban on Merchant Surcharges Amendment Bill,
which would prevent your local coffee shop, and indeed any other vendor, from placing a surcharge on all PayWave transactions. Here's National's Matt Ducey on behalf of the Minister of Commerce and Consumer Affairs.
In the short term, the focus is on addressing surcharges in retail store settings. Therefore, the bill imposes an initial ban on surcharges for all in-store EFTPOS, Visa and MasterCard payments. This will mean no surprises at the till for people who currently feel like they are being charged to use their own hard-earned money. It also means consumers will be able to make a purchase knowing exactly what they'll pay and how they'll pay it, regardless of whether they choose to swipe or tap. Surcharges are used by some retailers to recover the costs of merchant service fees from consumers. However, there can be harm to consumers if surcharges do not reflect the true cost to the retailer.
While Labour weren't stoked about the bill, they did pledge to support the bill to Select Committee. Here's Duncan Webb.
Well, you know, this could be a good idea, but what a dog's breakfast this government's made of it, right? I mean, let's have a look at it, right? We're going to actually support this to Select Committee. But by crikey, if this is what you do with a good idea, you know, my goodness gracious, it's how to make a good idea into an absolute mess.
The Greens, meanwhile, weren't so keen. Here's Lawrence Yunnan.
The Greens are opposed this bill. Now, there's a reason for that. Let's say when this was first announced, Parliament is like, oh, actually, you know what, that's not too bad. You know, people are not going to be paying for surcharges instead of PayWave. And I thought, oh, maybe the minister is doing something right. And then, here's the clincher. Then the Minister of Finance came out to say, you know what, business should just pass that cost on to consumers. And then I felt, you know what, you ruined it. You could have had something good there, but instead you are making the cost of living crisis worse by making businesses pass it on to pass it on to the customers and the consumers.
All of those bills will of course be taking submissions during the Select Committee process. The final first reading the House got through on Tuesday was the Income Tax Family Boost Amendment Bill, which got through all stages by Wednesday afternoon. The House was in urgency working through all these bills and other ones until Wednesday evening, with the government returning to the order paper for Thursday's legislative agenda. The sitting week finished on Thursday evening with the valedictory statement, which is the parliamentary equivalent of gathering around the staff room and listing off what you're going to miss about working here. Based off what they said in their statement, for Green MP Benjamin Doyle, that list probably isn't very long.
I have felt firsthand the unbelievable impact that being here can have on a person and those they love. I have seen that play out in violent, toxic, and real-world ways. No person should have to remove their child from school due to threats to their life. No person should have to avoid going to the supermarket or the letterbox because they have been advised that doing so could expose them to violence. No person should have to tell their parents that they can't attend the next family event to ensure their safety and privacy is not compromised. And despite that, I have stayed so true to myself and my community. I returned to Parliament when I was informed it would be unsafe to do so, because sometimes love is hard and means making sacrifices. Sometimes it means putting the kaupapa first, putting the needs of our communities, the planet, the generations that are yet to arrive first. Power does not reside here. It is not inherent in this place. We have only allowed that to be so. Power resides in the human spirit and in our relationships with one another and with this precious earth to which we owe everything. I rejoin that fight now and wish my comrades here my love and solidarity in the fight they continue in this place. This is a hostile and toxic place, especially if you're not a cis, straight, white man with a blue suit and a briefcase. But most of all, it is not fit for purpose. As a nation, we must reckon with this reality. A political system imposed upon this land and its people from a colonial empire which sought to name, claim, and maim is never going to honour te tiriti. It will never recognise the dignity of all life or seek justice for the poor and oppressed. It was built to serve a status quo that protects the powerful at the expense of the people, at the cost of community. This system was built, and so it can be rebuilt. The revolution begins in our hearts and minds, but there it must not remain. It must rise up from the land, from the people, from love and vision and hope for something infinitely better than what we are subjected to now. If not for us, then for our children and those in every generation to come.
Benjamin Doyle will be replaced by Mike Davidson. I te whakaronga koe ki te whare. You've been listening to The House, a program made with funding from Parliament's Office of the Clerk. Matua.